You and your smart AI probably have no idea where every line of code on your phone or computer actually came from. Truth is, they were written centuries ago. London, 1821. In the offices of the Royal Astronomical Society, the air is thick with the scent of cheap ink and anxiety. Piles of the Nautical Almanac clutter the tables, the very latitude and longitude of the British Empire's expansion. Charles Babbage flings open the window, letting a gale of cold air into his lab filled with brass fittings. In those error-riddled mathematical tables, he hears the cracking sound of an empire crumbling. Behind every decimal point calculated by hand, there lies a warship that might strike a reef. Babbage roars at the papers.
God Almighty! If only these calculations could be done by steam!
In that era, calculation was the domain of God. It was believed that only a human soul could navigate logic. But Babbage was a heretic. He loathed the errors of warm, fleshy bodies. He began to sketch frantically. It wasn't a biological creature. It was a metallic beast composed of tens of thousands of precision gears. This was the difference engine. It didn't need to think. It didn't need to rest. Through the sheer rotation of mechanics, it would spit out the most precise prophecies. The government of the time was awed by this mad dream, pouring in a fortune to buy a future that would never fail. 10 years passed. Babbage's lab became a bottomless pit, devouring gold. Craftsmen cursed amidst the shrieking friction of metal. Precision parts were scrapped because they couldn't meet Babbage's almost neurotic standards of accuracy. Before the difference engine was even finished, a more terrifying monster appeared in Babbage's mind: the analytical engine. It was no longer just a counter. It had a mill to process data and a store to hold results. It even learned to use punched cards for judgment. This was no longer a machine. It was a primitive brain of steel logic. Just as the world began to dismiss Babbage as a fraud and a madman, a woman in a silk gown stepped into his shadow. Ada Lovelace, daughter of the poet Lord Byron. From the clanging of cold metal, she heard a melody no one else perceived. Looking at Babbage's designs, which seemed destined never to leave the page, she wrote the first loop of code in human history. She declared, "This machine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity." A madman trapped in the 19th century and a genius who saw through time danced a lonely waltz across 2 centuries in the soot, coal dust of London. In the end, Babbage achieved nothing. The government cut off funding, his supporters vanished, and his analytical engine turned into heaps of rusting blueprints and discarded bearings. In 1871, Babbage died in poverty and neglect, his brain preserved in formaldehyde. It wasn't until over 100 years after his death that the London Science Museum built a complete difference engine based on his original drawings, using only materials available in the Victorian era. As the researcher turned the crank, gears silent for over a century began to mesh. Numbers flowed like spring water, flawless and divine. In that moment, the world finally heard Babbage's confession, a century late. Babbage never saw a computer of his own. He gave everything and left behind what seemed like a pile of non-functional scrap metal.
Why?
But was it really scrap? As we tap our fingers on screens today, as silicon civilization takes over the world, we can hear it within the cold transistors, the crisp clicking of brass gears from that afternoon in 1821. The greatest leaps of human civilization often begin with a near absurd obsession. In this age of exploding AI, are we truly inventing tools, or are we just stealing a spark of logic from the creator's original source code?